grow stronger yet. That is probably the first and only time you will ever hear a bass sing that. What's up, musical theater nerds? It's your boy Shouldn'tPaintSoFast, and what do we have here today? We have a Centerbeam flat car with opera windows. Yeah, I don't know either. In particular, this is one of the newish ones from Walthers Mainline. It is not the most detailed model in the world. The Mainline series from Walther is kind of like their mid-grade series of models. I think Proto is the most expensive one and the highest detailed one. Still, the details aren't bad. They're mostly all molded in, but there are some separately applied grab irons and stuff you can see like on the sides here. Some minimal underframe detail. You know, again, nothing to write home about, but for the purposes of being an affordable option to build out your fleet of rolling stock, I don't have any big complaints about it. Going to be a pretty straightforward weathering job on this one. These cars tend to get a little beat up in service. They have some particular sort of areas that they tend to get kind of rusty and weathered in, and some certain kind of damage they tend to accumulate over the course of their service life. We'll get to that later. To start, I've gone ahead and painted the truck side frames and the faces of the wheels just with some Vallejo burnt umber. Nothing too fancy there. I found that actually out of the bottle, that works really well as a color for like old rusty truck side frames and wheels. I'm also going to go ahead and paint the coupler knuckles with it while I've got it on my palette here. Oops. Annoyingly, this car is almost the exact same length between the wheels as my turntable is here, so it just keeps flopping around while I'm trying to paint. I'm also going to go ahead and paint this. I think this is part of the coupler box that just sticks through the frame. I'm going to go ahead and paint that rust colored too, just so it stands out a little less. So as you can see from the reference images, one of the common sort of weathering damage that these cars tend to develop, as the bundles of lumber get loaded into the center beam, they will tend to rub up against this structure on the inside of the car. And when that happens, sometimes the staples or the bands or whatever they use to hold the stacks of lumber together will rub up against the paint and cause it to flake off, which leads to rust developing in the areas where the paint has chipped off. So, to emulate that, what we're going to do is we're going to use our old reliable toothpick splatter method. I've mixed up, let's see if this will focus here, maybe, hello. I've mixed up our usual mix of burnt umber with a drop of standard rust from Mission Models in it, and we are just going to splatter to get some random rust dots all over the car. Reload the brush here. Another area you tend to see a lot of damage on center beams is on these bulkhead walls. Again, it comes from, you know, as the lumber or drywall is loaded right up against this bulkhead, you know, they bring it in on a forklift and then it kind of slides down as they drop it into place. And, you know, usually there's staples or whatever on the end of the wood, and that scratches the paint, which again causes these vertical scratches. I will throw up a reference image now. So to get that effect, again, still with our mixture of burnt umber and standard rust, I'm just going to dry brush start off very lightly. And slowly build up the scratches on the bulkhead. Can be a bit of a tedious process. But this is the best method I've found. For getting this exact effect. We don't necessarily need it to look like the finished product at this point, because we will be building up some more layers of paint on top of it. We just need to get a good base. To add a little more definition to these scratches on the bulkheads, I'm going in with some AK weathering pencils, particularly medium rust and dark rust, that I have both sharpened to within an inch of their lives. As you can see, we're just building up that layering, right? With the dark rust, I start from some of these paint splatters I made with the toothpick and the brush earlier. Just coming straight down to get some streaking. So the heavy lifting of the weathering job is actually going to be done with oil paints. As you can see, particularly I have the Optilone 502 matte effect thinner mixed with just a little bit of their brown wash oil paint. You can see from the reference photos there would be a lot of this sort of brown gray dirt that would tend to accumulate on the bottom of these cars as well as on the outside of the bulkheads. I've got this thinned down a little thicker than you would normally thin down a wash, because I do want so I have this thinned down a little thicker than I normally would thin down an oil wash, because I do want the pigment to adhere to all the flat surfaces. Normally with a wash, the goal is for it to kind of seep into the corners and to the surface details. In this case, I actually do want the surface to retain some of the brown pigment color. I tend not to go overboard weathering the bottoms of my rolling stock, but I do like to, hit the sides of these air cylinders and stuff that will be visible when the car is sitting flat on the track. So I had to take some time off from doing any model making for about a month, because as I've mentioned before, my painting studio is currently in my garage, and we had a cold snap here in the Puget Sound area, which is normal. That usually happens once or twice a year. When it was down significantly below freezing, and I would rather not spend my time out when it's that cold if I can avoid it. Thankfully, it does stay above freezing in my garage usually, because my furnace is out here. Although, the other reason why I couldn't be in the garage is actually, I got a new furnace last fall, and the HVAC guy forgot to install the propane conversion kit. I'm on propane out here, I'm kind of out in the sticks, as opposed to natural gas. And you know, it was running fine for like a week, and then it just stopped working. So I said, hey, this is under warranty. Y'all need to come out and take a look at this. And when the dude opened my furnace up, it looked like it was filled with coal. Like, it was the wildest thing I've ever seen. So, and go figure, that was the week when it was relatively warm, when I maybe could have started, you know, and potentially even finished this project here, but oh well. Well, it's kind of nice to take a little bit of a break too. While I was not painting, it also gave me some time to work on my big project for the year, which is I am breaking ground on a new shed I'm going to be building in my backyard. Well, not really building, I'm having a prefab shed delivered. That is going to potentially be the home of a future layout, definitely going to be where I'm moving my painting studio. So that's going to be delivered hopefully sometime soon, and I'll be making some videos about that, and hopefully take you all on the ride, along for the ride with that. So going in here on the deck of the car, I'm just working the wash mostly into the corners, you know, where sawdust would accumulate. Again, say the line with me, gang. The cool part about oil paints is because they take a couple days to dry. If I look at it tomorrow and decide there's too much paint on the deck, I can always wipe it off. So for the actual beam of the center beam, I'm going to be basically like dry brushing my oil paint onto the beam. I've got almost no paint on the brush itself. And I'm really not, again, trying to make it visible. I'm more or less going for a change in texture, just to make it look like it's coated in dust. Same thing, just going over these scratches that we painted and colored penciled earlier, just to make it look like more rust streaking down on the insides of the bulkheads. Then for the outside edges of the bulkheads, same thing. Starting at the bottom, kind of looping the paint on, and then kind of feathering it upwards. A little more on this ladder here. Alright, you can see it's kind of accumulating more at the bottom. And through the magic of television, it is now 4 days later. The oil paint has completely dried. And as you can see, the results look pretty good. I'm gonna go in with some more weathering pencils and just do a little more streaking around the rust patches, particularly on the bulkheads. But yeah, oil paints, man, they just work. Boom. Couple clear coats on top, aka matte varnish, and we are done. This literally took a couple hours. You could easily get this done over a weekend, not including drying time. Yeah, like I said, the oils do take a while to dry, especially, you know, if you're working in an environment that's not climate controlled, like a garage. But yeah, weathering is pretty straightforward. Once you get the hang of it, once you find the blends of paints that you like, and you get the basic techniques down, really the art of it is interpreting the reference photos, and, you know, if your goal is photorealism, you know, the interpretation and applying the techniques that you've developed over the years to the model is really where the art form comes from. With that being said, I'm probably not going to do another video that's just a straight up weathering tutorial. Still going to be doing videos, but, you know, in terms of weathering, you know, I've done locomotives, I've done freight cars. Passenger cars really don't get too weathered, so, you know, I don't even know what I'd do if I had some. But yeah, who knows, maybe I'll end up doing like custom graffiti work, or if I get something special or interesting like that, you know, I'll record that and do a video, obviously. But yeah, I appreciate you all watching, and remember, the Phantom of the Opera is there, inside your mind. I do want some of the pigment. Oh, shit.